Hello, my name is Nitesh. I'm today trying to briefly explain the requirement I have for the project that I'm looking to do. Essentially, to give you a brief background, I work in sales, and my primary job is to help first home buyer get into their own home. Uh, the overall process looks like fairly simple. I meet a client, I capture all the finance related information, what all things they have to get it done to qualify to get a home loan. Once I find out what kind of financial solution would work for them, then I would find a land based on their budget and then eventually put a house together. So so it's a one-stop shop where people usually come in and they don't know what sort of savings, what sort of deposits, what sort of borrowing capacity, what's their budget and all of that. And the idea is to make sure that they're made aware, and then we work towards a plan. Now in this, I do have to capture quite a few information, and there are multiple Excel sheets that I use at this stage. So to give you a brief, to start the process, this is a master file. I usually create a copy of this file for every client that I meet. So if you open this, then you can see there are some appointment processes, there are some Excel sheets, there's some PDF file. Now, the idea to achieve, or the idea in the first appointment, which is related to finance side, is to get the information filled in this form, so which is called financial health assessment, in which you capture the name of the client, address of the client, cell phone numbers, email address, date of birth, status, driver's license number, number of dependents, age of kids, first home buyer or second home buyer, permanent resident, so all sorts of. Now, my vision eventually is to achieve the Excel sheet which will capture a lot of information and also pre-fill half the information, or at least most of the information from that Excel sheet, and all I have to take is a printout and fill the remaining details. And in the end, the second page comes in where they just put their name, print their name in, and they put a signature there, so I can prepare this as a part of my file. So that's there. Now there are two versions of input sheet which has been created. Now one is a client data input sheet, and the other is a input sheet. Now this is an older version and this is a newer version. I would like to work on a newer version because it is more automated than this one. But if somebody is looking to keen to work on some other version or some other format, I can work on that as well. So essentially what we are doing is we are trying to capture some information on this input sheet of individual client. So yeah, once this file is open, yep, so now this file is open. This is client input sheet. There is also two calculators here, so bankwest serviceability calculator and key start calculator. Now these calculators are calculated by individual banks, which they give to brokers and to people like us to help do the calculation. Now if you look at this calculator, this is version 1.23. Now this is the latest version, and if you look at the bankwest calculator, it's latest version 2 as well. Yes, it is the latest version 2, so this is also latest. And it was last updated on 20th July, so it's fairly recent. So these are the two versions of Excel sheet which we need to fill in to find out what sort of borrowing capacity of client are in that calculator and this calculator, and give a comparison figure. So that's one thing that we have to achieve. But what we have done, and this is what was done in the past, and we were quite successful in this, but my friend left my business, so I have to get it done from the scratch now. So this Excel sheet, which is input sheet, does have a calculator of this one and also the other one. But if you look at this is version 1.22, and this calculator was updated on 29 September 2017, and whereas those ones are the recent one. Now these calculator or these input sheets changes very often. So some once in 3 months to once in 6 months sometimes. And the whole idea is that if I'm looking for somebody who I can partner for long term, so when the new sheet comes in, they would be able to help us create a new sheet which has all the functionality. All right. So to start with, now of course the front looks like this, and I don't want this front. I want it's the column here, name of the client, so I can put their name, I can put their address, and I can also put the driver's license number, which will help me eventually when I press a print button. It should get filled in these forms, in these columns. Now of course this doesn't need to look like this. We can create an Excel sheet form which will capture pretty much most of the information. The second page can look exactly like this, but the first page can look in whichever format that we prefer to. So here, after capturing their name, driver's license number, their current address, all of that, then the first question is whether they are single or couple. Now I will show you what sort of change happens when you select each of them. Now if you look at the key start calculator, the number of single applicant is 0, number of couple applicant is 0, number of dependent is 0. If you look at bank, it says A, B, C, D, and there's a income here, there's rental here, and they're saying family unit 1, and the number of adult is 0 and number of kids are 0. And these figures are pre-filled. We just need to fill it because otherwise it doesn't fill itself. So this is something which is easy to fix. Let me just make it smaller so we can all see it. And all right. So the first thing is whether it's a single applicant or a couple. Now let's say we put it as a couple. Now the moment we put it as a couple, you would notice that there is one more applicant input data field came in. So if you put it nothing, it doesn't come in. If you put it as single, it doesn't come in. And if you put it as couple, it does come in. Now the moment we put couple, and so to give an example, if you put single, if you look at key start calculator, it says number of applicant is 1, single applicant. If you look at bank, it says adult family 1. It still says family 1, family 2, but it says adult family 1. Now for the sake of example, we'll put couple. The moment couple comes in, the two section came in key start, the single applicant became 0 and the couple became 1. Now this is a BankWest calculator where it became adult as 2. Now are they first home buyer? Yes or no is the option. So if they are first home buyer, then you put first home buyer. Now when they put first home buyer, nothing in this sheet changes, but in this sheet where it says first home buyer, I would prefer to have a tick or yes or no option here mentioned. All right, so now it's a first home buyer for the sake of this example. Now it comes number of dependent. Now number of dependent is basically number of kids. Let's say in this example we'll put 2 kids. Now the moment we put 2, the ages of kids are being asked, and let's say for this example we'll put one kid is 5 year, the other kid is 7 year. Now in very rare instance, the percentage has to change. Basically that means if couple had a kid with some other partner, and let's say this kid is with some other partner, so percent of care changes. Now if the percent of care changes, this portion changes. But if you look at the otherwise about the rest of the things, so there are 2 dependent here, and we have mentioned the age. In key start calculator, it goes 2 dependent, 1 couple, 2 dependent, and the ages of kids. Whereas in BankWest calculator, all it does is it says 2 adult and 2 kids. Now what you would notice also, when we put the ages of 2 kids and we have not filled any other information, this became applicant 1. So let's say if I remove the number of kids and we show nothing here, and we go number of kids 0, there's nothing here mentioned. Whereas the moment we set number of kid 2, the ages are requested, and key start is saying applicant 1. You can actually change applicant 1 to applicant 2, but it doesn't matter. It just have to be, usually you have an option of nothing here. We would just want to make it applicant 1. So when we trigger number of kids, it always have to go to applicant 1 or applicant 2 in the drop down. Now this Excel sheet in the newer version has changed the background matrix or background calculation, but didn't change anything else apart from the front layout. Anyway, so that's there. And now the ages of kids, so we put 5 and 7 in this example. So that has updated this sheet by the ages of kids. Now in Australia, where I am, if you have a kid, based on your family income, you get some money from government in form of family tax A and family tax B. These are assistance given to people to raise their kids. Now, because at this stage the income of this couple is literally zero, they would get $14,000 worth of family tax A and B. So they're getting too much of money anyways, because they don't have any job, and hence this number of family tax A and B put together is whatever the number is per annum, because it is paid fortnightly, so that becomes annually this much. So that amount is taken from here and updated here. So once you put these ages, whatever the number is here, the addition of this is updated here. All right, so we updated this, it also updates here. So basically when you put that, this number comes from this calculator, and these numbers will be also reflective in this here. Now the income. So because we have chosen a couple, there are two applicants. So first applicant, now what is their income? There are two ways to calculate. Sometimes I can use a different calculator to calculate that, but otherwise I would usually go and press the button of calculator. Now when you press this button, it basically takes me to this one, this sheet. So it goes here, and here I can calculate hourly rate, gross per pay, annualized pay slips, or net pay calculator. Now if I go to, most of the clients in Australia works on hourly rate, so I'll go on hourly rate, and there is a rate of $35 per hour. So let's say this client works $35 per hour, and he does 38 hours a week, which means his weekly income is $1,330. Now this client in this instance also does overtime. Now overtime is paid at 1.5 times, to double time, 3 times. So these are the multipliers. So these multipliers usually comes if somebody is working on Sunday, he will get, and that's an overtime, so he gets overtime, penalty rate, and all of that. So in this example, the hourly rate is 35, this guy 38 hours. He also does around, let's say, 5 hours of overtime at 1.5 hours, and he also does 2 hours on overtime every week. So he basically works 7 hours on overtime, and then 38 hours is normal time. So if you look at that, there are two numbers, which is 69,160 as a base income, annual income, and then he gets $20,930 as an overtime. Now I go back and I put his income as $69,000 or whatever that number was, I don't remember, and the overtime was around $20,000, and these are per annum. Now sometimes my client know exactly how much they are on, and they might say that I am on $1,000 a week. So in that case, we put a weekly figure and fortnightly, monthly, annually, depending upon whatever they are aware of. But in most cases, I would like to calculate that. So once we do a calculation, now we know that this couple has an income like this. Now the reason why we capture income in two different streams is something I will update you, but to look at the difference, if you look at this income at this stage, we go to Keystart. What Keystart has done is, because this guy is full-time and he has a base income and he has an overtime, you put it in a Keystart calculator, the base income goes in gross income or salary, and overtime goes in overtime section. Now this overtime section is here and the gross income is here. The reason why these are two different numbers is because base income is calculated 100%. So they will say if you are on $69,000, your income used to calculate your borrowing capacity is 100% of your base salary. For the overtime, they only take it at 30%. So although this guy is put together on 69 plus 20, his income is with family tax A and B is around $96,000, but the amount that they are going to use is 69 from his base, but instead of $20,000 they will only use $6,000, which is 30% of $20,000 as an overtime, which means his income, assessable income, which is what they're going to calculate, is only 82, which is roughly around $14,000 less than what his actual income is. But that's how they do a calculation, because overtime is never guaranteed, it can drop off, so they only take 30% of that. So that's there. Now when you go to bank has a different way of doing it. Now what bank does is, bank would say that 69 plus 20 is 79.89. So what bank does is, bank takes full income of base income, so gross income. Now there are some errors between this sheet and this sheet, which is one thing I would like to fix. So what bank does is, bank take base income full and 75% of the overtime. So 75% of this is roughly around how much, $15,000. So they will take 69 plus 15, so 75. So right now if you sum this up, it should come to around 89, but bank will only take it as 85. So instead of 89, because the overtime is calculated at 75%. So that's how the income is updated here. Now that's how overtime is calculated and income is calculated. Now let's go to the second applicant. Now with second applicant, this applicant is a casual employee. Now if somebody is a casual employee, their income is calculated in a very different way. So let's say she is a casual employee, and let's again go to the calculator, and we go to hourly calculator, and she gets $30 an hour, and she does casual, so average 25 hours, and in casual there's no overtime, it's just casual. So she on an average gets 25 hours a week, and she's on $30 an hour, so which means she is overall on $39,000. So we'll put $39,000 as a casual income. Now if you see, after putting that, it became zero. So if you earn too much, you don't get that family tax A and B that I discussed. But if you look at in Keystart, what happened is this 39 came in this section, not like this guy's cash gross income. So it didn't come here, it came here. Now the reason they do it this way is they take casual employee and they only value them at 92% of their annual income, because when you're casual you don't get sick leave, pay leave, or all those leaves which is get paid off. So that's why it is only calculated 20%. Now if I would have to change this to a self-employed, so let's say somebody has a business and I say this is a self-employed client, then Keystart will take it as self-employed and then it will be calculated 100%. But for the sake of this example, we'll put it as a casual employee. So if you look at that, they have updated the income and this income has gone here. Now when it comes to bank has, so if you look at this Keystart one, it is around 36, 92%. Now bank usually do 92 to 95%. Now this is also one of the glitch that we had to fix. So this is at 92%. Banks will also value at 92. So this number should not be 36. It should be exactly same as this. So the key difference is casual is still exactly same, like this calculator and this calculator should have same data, but in overtime bank will take 75% of the income in overtime, whereas this key government bank will only take it at 30%. Now those are the numbers that we will put. So let's say these numbers are there, these numbers are there in this section. Now so this is where the income part comes in. Now let's take an example just for sake of it, that this person also does one more job. or let's not put him on job because he's already stressed with overtime. So let's say this person has a second job. So she has a second job and her annual income there is roughly around $10,000. So if you put a second job and an income of $10,000, now the second job comes in others, and the second job is always calculated at only 50%. So she's earning $10,000 there, but her valuation will only happen on $5,000. Whereas if you go to bank, so her income was actually 49, but they are only taking $40,000. Whereas if you look at bank, it is 46. So what bank does is bank takes second income at full rate. So right now they have taken the casual at 35 and they have taken the 10 full. So this has to be 35 and this has to be full. So it has to be 45, but it is 46. As I said, there's a glitch here. So it has to be 45. So they will take the second income at full and they will take casual income at 92%. So let's not stress their family. Let's not have them do job. And or let's keep it. Let's keep it that way. All right. Now, these family tax A and B has to come from this number, whatever is here. So this plus this has to come here, and whatever comes here has to go here. So this is how the sheets will fluctuate. Now there's the next section. Now it's pretty common some in Australia that people receive child maintenance or they pay child maintenance, either way. So if they receive child maintenance, which means somebody is paying them to keep the child, not from government but from some individuals, or people are paying child maintenance to some other one. So let's say we put a figure here: child maintenance received, child maintenance sent. Let's say in this case the example is child maintenance received is 0 and child maintenance paid is 50, and in this instance child maintenance received is 50 and the child maintenance paid is 0. Now if you put this figure in Keystart calculator, if you look at that, child maintenance paid comes here and child maintenance paid here, which came in, and child maintenance received is here. So there's a glitch here again. So child maintenance received, it should have been $50 and it should have been weekly, but that didn't come in for whatever reason. So that's one of the glitch that we have to fix. So it has to be whatever these numbers are has to go. So when somebody receives the money, it goes in child maintenance received section, and when somebody pays the money, it has to go in this section. Now what happens in bank? Sorry, I'll just put that again. So child maintenance paying is $50, let's say. So if you go to bank, it goes that child maintenance payable is section. Now in bank everything is calculated per annum. So whatever the number is, whatever that number is, $50 multiplied by 52 weeks, and that's how this number is coming here, 2,600. So in bank that number has to be updated here if there is any. So let's take it 0 for now. All right, so then comes the next section, which is the debt section, which means what sort of debts they have. So it's a car loan, personal loan, others and others. Now car loan. So let's say this couple has a $12,000 car loan and they pay $200 per week. Let's say they pay that per week. They also have some sort of personal loan of $10,000 and they pay $150 per week. Now once I put this figure in, what the calculation happens is they calculate these two numbers. So although this is what they're actually paying, but this is not an ideal scenario. We always prefer to refinance them. So if we go down, you will see the numbers are here added up. So total debt and then the repayment total paid weekly, so that was 200 and 150, so 350. And then what we said the total repayment after refinance at 14% interest rate for over 7 years would become $95 per week. So of course they can finish that loan in 2 years by paying higher amount, but it's not good. It doesn't look good on their home loan application. Their repayments has to be minimum. So we basically does at 14% interest rate over 7 years. Now in ideal world, I would like to have a capability where I can input the data that okay, we can do instead of 14%, 15% or 16% or whatever that number. I should have ability to change that, but if not, that's not a deal breaker. So now the number comes as $95 per week. Now that's what their repayment is looking like right now. So they actually pay 350, but we can refinance later on and we can make it $95. So what we are going to do is we are going to add this as it is, like keeping it as it is. And if they have a credit card, whatever the limit is and whatever the owing is. Now let's say they owe $3,000. So if you look at that, they owe $3,000 in the credit card. It's a $12,000, $10,000 in three. So if you look at down, it became 25, and this is the repayment, and this is the weekly repayment after refinance. Now although we didn't calculated the what is the repayment paid when you put credit card, now the credit card repayments is fairly simple. Again, one more calculation. The calculation is you pay 3% of your outstanding amount every month. So that's the number that we have to use. We have to use 3% of this amount, whatever that amount is. This amount, 3% of that, whatever is outstanding, is your monthly repayment. Multiply by 12 and divide by 52. That will give you the weekly figure, and that weekly figure has to be added in this. So initially, if you look at this, they paid 350, but for this they just added $21 or something like that. So now after refinancing that, it will become $108 per week. Okay, so these numbers came in. Now what is an impact of that? The impact of these calculations in Keystart, we have straight away gone into a refinanced figure rather than the original figure which has come here, which is basically existing debt. We're not bothered to fill that balance and everything. All we want to do is okay, repayment of $108 per week. Whereas if you look at bank, the repayment has gone here, but in bank, as I said before, everything is annual. You have to put an annual figure. So whatever that after refinance figure was, multiply by 52 weeks, and this figure comes in, and we put this figure here. So we update this sheet by this figure. So this figure is updated here, this figure is updated here. Now if they are hex payable or yes or no is the answer usually. If it is yes, and if we say yes, and that we have to, if you put yes here, all it does is basically enables a section here, hex payable yes, that's it. It doesn't do anything, it just says yes here, and the sheet automatically calculates this number. It doesn't impact too much on the bank calculator, but it does impact the Keystart one. Okay, so let's say for this example, now there's very limited people who comes with yes answer. Now we calculate their rent. So let's say this couple pay a rent of $380 per week. Also we put in the savings, so the current saving is, let's say, $2,000, and what they have said is that they can save $200 per week out of their salary, and that's the maximum they can save. So now we did all of these. Now after filling this number, it doesn't go anywhere. It does help us doing some other calculation, which I'll take you there, but at this stage these numbers just stays as it is. Now here comes the borrowing capacity result. Now if you see there, you can see Keystart calculator, and it says bank calculator. Now Keystart calculator, the Keystart, the maximum somebody can borrow is 480. So as when the number goes more than 480, it says max package equals 480. So of course the borrowing capacity is more than the maximum package, but this is still showing. So where this number came from, if you go to Keystart, this is where this number came from, $537, $137,000. Now, but if you see, bank is still showing $10,000. Now, it's not the bank can only give $10,000. It's just that for some reason my friend couldn't automate that, and all it has to happen is when you have to come here, you have to press max loan, and then the number comes in here, and then you press OK, and then we go back, and then it updates the number. So every time we want to change this, we have to go back to there. So let's say if we went in and said, okay, sorry, this number was wrong, and instead of $10,000 he only makes, so $20,000, he only makes $10,000 in overtime, and then the borrowing capacity is updated here automatically, but it didn't change here. So from 649 we again hit the max button, become 586, and then we went back, and the number comes in. So this is calculated automatic, but this is not calculated automatic, it has to be pressed. Now my idea is, and this is not a project which I needed to be done like tomorrow, but if it can be incorporated, it will be great, is to have one more bank calculator. So like Restart, this bank which is Bank West, there's one more bank that I want to put in, where I want to see key start. So not, instead of written key start, I would like to say it government bank, private bank 1, private bank 2, and then the borrowing capacity of these two banks has to come in here. So we have 3 borrowing capacity. Okay, now if you look at the key start calculator, there's one more component that I want to touch, is the fact that there's debt to income ratio. It's basically nothing but a ratio. It's a fairly simple calculation. What they want is, they don't want anyone to have more than 10% debt to income ratio. So let's say your debt is more than 10% of your income per month or per week or whatever that scenario is, then they will not give you loan. So let's say if I open a normal key start calculator and I say this person is on $69,000, so let's say I'll just put it as a couple, and I put it as 2 kids, and their ages are 5 and 7, and she was on $30,000 per annum, and they have a debt. So what was the debt here? Their debt was initially 350, 371. So if I put 371 per week, it will show that debt to income ratio is 42%. Of course, he had an overtime of $10,000. Oh, sorry, this is not correct. It's annum. Okay, so if you look at this, it is saying that the debt to income ratio is 19.3%. The maximum debt to income ratio allowed in Keystart is 10%. So what it does is, it says if debt to income ratio current is around 17%, because of course these numbers were different. This was $10,000, or this was 39 and 10. So if I go $39,000 and the other income of $10,000 per annum, and this is calculated at 50%. Now when you put others, you have to always put a percentage. So if it is second job, it is always have to be 50%. So if you look at this, the debt to income ratio is 17.1%, which is a factor which can reject their bank application or government application. So it says that your current debt to income ratio is 17% for my client, but after we refinance as used in borrowing capacity, it will drop down to 5%. Now if let's say this number was smaller, so let's say they had no debt here, then they were 8% debt to income ratio, which is green, and the new debt to income ratio is green again. But because it is more than 10%, it is showing this is red and this is in green. Now If you look at this, it also does one more thing. Now if you look at this one, in the same sheet you will see the qualify assess income criteria. And the qualify income criteria 112 800, accessible income 112 800. Now these are some numbers to look at. If we are looking for regional, the maximum income for individual can be 110, the maximum income for couple has to be 135, and maximum income for family has to be 135. But if I do, sorry, if I do, if I change the suburb, which is city, which is metro region, the single income maximum has to be $90,000, couple has to be 115, and family has to be 135. Now single is single person, couple is couple, family is couple with at least one kid. So in this sheet it has calculated that you are couple, like because it says you are couple with two kids, it automatically has updated this sheet that the accessible, the metro maximum income for metro and maximum income for regional. Now this is also one of the criteria. If their income is more than that, then they can't access Key Start or access government funding. So as you all know, government is strict, so they have a restriction on how much maximum you can earn. So metro, they usually don't want metro people to earn too much, and they want regional people to, they allow regional people to earn more. So that's what they're saying, that 112 is the accessible income. The accessible income came from here, and they're saying the metro, the cutoff is 135, regional, the cutoff is 135. Now let's take an example that this guy, instead of this girl, instead of 39, she makes 59. I'm not sorry, 59, 69. So if she makes $69,000, this will change, that your accessible income is 140, 480, whereas the cutoff for metro and regional is 135. So we just wanted to make it highlight to red if something is alarming, because sometimes their income is more than accessible income. So we, in that case, we tell them usually to go and take a pay cut to basically access this option. Anyways, so based on that, this is the maximum borrowing capacity came, and this is the maximum borrowing capacity came. Now this is one of the formulas that I need to essentially work on. And so what does this formula has to do is, it's usually, you can't change it, but if it is more than 480, and this is where I wanted to improve in this sheet, so this number has to be exactly same as this number, but instead of showing it in red or yellow or green, if it is more than 480, I just want it to be showing 480 instead of 515. Now if it is 480, then whatever this borrowing capacity is minus 200. So when we do want to find out, now we found the budget as 480 for this one and 586 for this one. So these are the two different budgets that we have in hand. What does that mean? The approx land budget, so the land amount, the amount that we can spend on land, minimum is whatever that amount is minus $200,000, and maximum we can spend is whatever this amount is minus $160,000. Now because this is 515 but nobody can get it, it is showing incorrect value for Key Start land budget. But I want to make a formula, addition of formula here, that if it is more than 480, just write 480, and if it is less than 480, write the number that you get from the sheet. So then that becomes the realistic budget for Key Start. And then when it comes to bank, then of course this numbers are usually all right. So this number minus $200,000 is this, and this number is minus 160 of this. So that's how these budget for land comes in, which means, so what we have done so far, we have calculated how much they can borrow from government and how much they can borrow from private banks, and we have established a budget that we have for land, and we have also established minimum and maximum budget for bank. So till then this portion is done. Now This section I actually don't prefer to have it here, but who cares, we can have it here, or we can just put a section here. So this basically takes us to a link which is here below, and this takes us to a link which is mentioned here below. So these are the two links that it basically takes us to once we press this button. All right, so what will happen next? The next thing would be that we'll do a cash flow improvement. We'll show them to clients that yes, your current debts are 25 grand, you're currently paying this, you are currently, after refinance, you will only be paying this much, which means your saving capacity will go up by $263. Now this going up in saving capacity means that they can save now 263 per week, plus they're currently saving 200, so that means they can actually save 463. We do need this number because then we will be able to find out how much time it will take them to save their initial deposit amount. So that's there. uh, I hope this section of the explanation is fairly straightforward, like fairly detailed. But if somebody has a question, I'll be happy to answer them. In case I'm not a technical guy, I just don't understand formulas. I know how to operate Excel sheet, and I don't know a little bit, but then I'm relying on an expert to find out the hidden formulas from here. All right, now so this is where the bank and key start and input sheet are all worked out, and we basically do this portion. The idea here is that after this section, I would prefer a button, or something like this tab where I press, and it basically comes up with a form which is filled, which has some sort of this sense. It doesn't need to have financial health assessment and wow homes logo and whatnot. It basically just have to capture their last name, first name, middle names. This is how we have to capture, because that's how my team understand. Then their current address that I will take. I will also fill their cell phone numbers. I will this will be, they don't need to fill. They also don't need to fill their email address. Date of birth is also something that doesn't matter to me. uh, Marital status, yes, if they are single or couple, I just need to make sure that it is mentioned here. But even if it doesn't capture, that's fine. Driver's license number is also fine, doesn't need to be captured here. Number of dependent definitely needs to be captured here, which we have already calculated from this section. So number of dependent, so that figure has to be calculated from there. Age of dependent has to be mentioned there, which we have captured there. First home buyer, yes or no. It can be a form of tick, or it can be just yes or no in this tab, doesn't matter. Permanent resident doesn't need to be filled, it can remain empty. They can fill it later on. Guarantor option can again stay later on. Current renting, it can stay, it has to have that figure, that if they're currently renting, what is the rental figure, if it is. Employment status, this is where I would need full-time, part-time, casual, whatever we have filled there. Also, occupation, employer name, we can fill it by hand. Date commenced, we can fill it by hand. Previous employment, we can cover by hand. Gross income base per annum, now these figures we have already calculated in the sheet, so I would prefer those numbers to reflect here. It doesn't have to be exactly this form, it has to be something similar looking. Overtime we have calculated there, and I would prefer that to be there. Now in this example, we had this client who had a casual job, and she also has a second job. In that case, I don't know how do we want to capture it, but we can create a line here or something, that first job, second job, and something of that sort, if we can capture that. uh, if not, then if all of this cannot be captured, I'm still happy if we straight away go and we just say print this, and it comes in this format. That is also fine with me, as long as we have this. Now it doesn't have to have these logos of the builder, because that will be something that I have to take permission for. But anyway, so once I print press, it can be exactly that form, whatever way it was, but I just want to capture their names and everything. And then debts and everything, which is already captured there. Savings and everything is also captured there. And then this portion filled by the client with hand. So it just have to be there. When it's print button, this page has to come in, and that page has to come in, so we can take a print front and back, and then they can print their name and they can sign here that yes, they have told this information based on their understanding. So I can cover my back. All right, so now going back to the sheet. So that is the initial portion where we are discussing finance. Now after, let's say, establishing their budget and everything, what we do is we go on to a cash flow analysis. Now the cash flow analysis here, we decide, let's say we decide to go with bank or we decide to go with Keystart, whichever one it is. Now in this stage I can put 480 if that is what the limit is, and if I go to bank, I want to have an ability that okay, the bank the maximum loan amount is 480, let's say. So these numbers usually are taken from there, but I would rather have it here. So let's say if I chose Keystart, I want a section here where it says what is the interest rate that we are using. So if let's say I chose Keystart, now in here it is already saying that interest rate for Keystart is 5.16 and interest rate for bank is 4%, but I want to choose that number from here, saying that okay, the interest rate used is 5.16 because these interest rate does change like once in 3 months. So sometimes the whole Excel sheet needs to be changed just because we have to put the new number. So through 480, and payment frequency is weekly, we can change it to weekly, fortnightly, monthly, whatever way it is. So let's say we're going with Keystart. In that case, what it does is it says okay, your current rent is 380, your current debts are 371 per week, which means you will be spending $751 per week outgoing. So what it does, it says rent, debt, and what you can save. Now after consolidation of your loan, your rent will still remain 380 because you can't consolidate that, but this will become 108. So your net outgoing will become 488 instead of 751. So your saving capacity will go up by 463. In the later stage, the home principal, so that will happen is once you move in the house, there will be home loan, there will be this debt, and there will be home loan principal. Now, as we all understand, every interest rate has P and I, so home loan has a principal and interest. So it's basically showing that the home loan interest rate is, the interest rate in the interest amount that you will be paying in your home will be $476. The interest amount will be 129, and they will be paying 108. So that means their overall cash flow will become 754, which means they can still save $237, which is better than they used to be. Now after that, we refinance this loan debt, which is 25 grand in this example. That's 25 grand. So 25 grand is consolidated and it has put in the home loan, and we have moved to bank. So all we did was we consolidated, we took this debt, which is 25 grand. Now in a year's time, we reduce it, that 25 grand, by 10, 15 to 20%. I said, and now the debt is left $20,000. The home loan was taken 480, and now the bank interest rate is 4%. So the loan amount is 480. It will become 500 because we have added $20,000 of this debt, and then at 4% interest rate, all they will be paying is this amount, where the interest will be this much and the principal will be this much, and they will have capability to save $402. The idea of this is to show them that you are in a worst of situation right now. After consolidation, it will improve your situation. Once you move in your house, it will go up again, but once we move to a private bank, because the interest rates of private banks are lower, you will be much better off than this situation. So this is the whole purpose of this sheet, and it does look a little clunky, but if somebody can make it beautiful, that will be awesome. Otherwise, it is what it is. So that's how I use this input sheet, and this is what I want to be done as part of my phase 1 of my project. Now I will also continue with the second project in the next video, and we'll catch up with you on that. Cheers, thanks.